Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, as today I have another Star Wars Black Series action figure review for you. This is of course in the 6-inch scale, and it is a Jedi Knight that we see in the prequel films, as they for a long time were known. Probably just episode 1, 2 and 3 these days. But yes, we have Adi Mundi. Now, funnily enough, I have a lot of affection for this character. I believe this figure was released once before, and this is a re-release. I might be wrong on that, or it might be a tweaked release. This is specifically from his appearance in Attack of the Clones, but he doesn't really seem to change his costume throughout the films, as much as I can tell anyway. Now, I have a lot of affection for this character, as I mentioned, and the reason for that is because really he was the first Jedi I knew anything about. Back when Star Wars Episode 1 was getting ready to release, they released a comic book series simply called Star Wars, and the first 6 issues were called Prelude to Rebellion, and they followed up with this fantastic Outlander series. And across these 12 issues, it all focused on this character, Adi Mundi. He was the central Jedi that we followed, and it was quite exciting at the time. I thought he was going to play quite a large role in the films because of this lead-in. Sadly, that wasn't the case. He's really a very minor character, a supporting character that we see mostly in the background across the 3 movies. But nevertheless, because of that comic book and because of the excitement and the anticipation that went along with Episode 1, I have so much affection for this character, and I've always wanted to have an action figure of him. So finally, my dream has been realised. So let's start off by taking a look at the packaging. And by now, there's no real surprises here. You know what to expect. I quite like this packaging. It's quite small and slimline, which is great. There's not an awful lot going on the front. It is mostly window display with the Star Wars logo. But on the side panel, I really like this more recent approach they've taken in recent years, where they actually have this illustrated artwork. I think this looks really, really good. This is newly commissioned for this release. It looks fantastic. This is a great pose of the character holding his lightsaber like that. I think this looks really good. It's largely grayscale with a little hint of red, as you can see. I would prefer this to be more full colour, but this is the style that Hasbro have opted for the Black Series, and this is way better than what we used to get back in the day, where it was just a black border. So I'm happy with this. You can stack this up on your shelf and put it side by side with the other figures in the collection, and it looks pretty displayable. So I think this looks really, really good. So, once we liberate the figure from his packaging, I have to say first impressions is that he does not disappoint. This is pretty much everything I wanted from this figure, and I'm really, really happy with it overall, with a few minor nitpicks here and there. If we kick off by taking a look at this head sculpt, I think they've done a really good job with this sculpt. Now, it is an alien, which means it's a little bit easier to do, but it is based on the likeness of an actor, obviously in that prosthetic makeup, and I think they've done a pretty solid job. I can't really fault this. This is, yeah, pretty much pitch perfect to what we see on screen. So good job, Hasbro. I think you've nailed this one. In terms of the paint washes that we see, there's actually a little bit of detailing going on, particularly around the eyes there. There's some different flesh tones being used, which is great. And I think, yeah, this looks really good. Likewise, if you look at the back of the head, he has some hair there, and you can see, you know, he's got the painted bobble in there, and a little bit of a wash running through his hair, which is adding a little bit of depth and texture, which is nice to see. Now, the sculpting of his Jedi robes are really nicely done. We can see in the arms there's actually individual grooves that have been cut into the sculpt there, which look really good. They actually have that billowy effect, which looks great, even though it's plastic, of course. And then we have his central torso hood, which is an extra rubber layer over the top of the figure. It's not removable, and it is fixed, so it's not cloth. I think I would have preferred cloth, because I do quite like that when we see that on their on the Black Series Jedi Knights. We often get a cloth cape. Now, his costume is slightly different to the others. This is more of a tunic. It still has a hood. Obviously, this one doesn't put up, which is a shame, because I would have liked that option. But nevertheless, you know, it is sculpted in there, and I think this, you know, this looks the part, which is great. We can see his belt detail, which is quite nicely painted and nicely sculpted in there, and there's a little space for his lightsaber that we'll see a little bit later. So that looks good. I think my criticism here, and it is minor, it's just that, you know, there's no paint wash running through this, just to give it that sense of life, that texture, that depth that I'm always talking about. And it just feels a little bit bare bones and a little bit basic. I think the sculpt is great. The material they've used is really good. I just wish there'd been a bit of a paint wash over this, a lighter brown, or a blue wash maybe, just something to just you know, draw it out. I also want to note that one of his hands actually has this really cool configuration with his fingers. I've not seen this before on other Black Series figures. I could be wrong, but this feels like a brand new piece, and it looks really cool. I really like this. It's kind of got the his force fingers, for lack of a better expression. I'm not sure how to describe this really, but it's as if he's using the force. You can put him in some interesting poses. Is what I'm trying to say with this. And then if we look at his boots, again, his boots are really nicely sculpted. I'm not sure if this is specific to this character. I'm not sure if I've seen this on any other figures. It looks new to me, but I could be wrong. But these are nicely sculpted, but again, my same criticism remains here in terms of the lack of paint wash to really draw out the details that are there in the sculpt. And it's such a shame, really. Just an extra little touch would have really brought this much more to life. Moving on to the articulation, he has a ball joint at the top of the neck and the bottom of the neck, which you can't actually see, so it's very well hidden, but it does allow him to spin his head from side to side. He can lean it left and right a really good distance as well, because those two joints work really well together, and he can bend his head and neck forward and backwards a healthy distance too, which is great. He then has ball joints in the shoulders, as you'd expect, so they do lift up and out. There is a single pin swivel at his elbow because of that robe effect they've gone for, and it is quite a chunky joint. He can bend his arm to 90 degrees quite comfortably, and it's quite a smooth joint as well, so I have to give him credit for that. Of course, he does have a ball joint at the hand there as well, in the wrist, which will rotate all the way around and hinge forwards and backwards. And he has a ball joint in the torso, allowing him to spin from side to side, lean left and right a really nice distance, and he can bend forwards and backwards as well. More backwards than forwards, but still there's a good range of motion here. He's got ball joints in the hips, the legs will kick out to the side despite having that rubber cloak in place. There's also a pin swivel at the knee, allowing that leg to rotate all the way around and hinge to 90 degrees. And just like the arm, this is quite a big chunky joint, but actually it's very, very smooth and it works really, very nicely actually. And then finally he has the ankle pivot that will allow the foot to hinge forwards and backwards, but also rock from side to side. He's quite light when it comes to accessories. I couldn't think what else we would give him, to be honest, but he does come with his lightsaber, which is great, and this is nicely sculpted, although not particularly well painted. It is just silver, and it would have been nice if there had been a bit of a black wash to highlight some of the ridges and grooves on the handle. But of course the blade is removable, so you can choose to have it activated or not activated, and you can place it on his belt nice and snugly there. Through the peg, so nice and straightforward, and it looks pretty good. Of course, he has no issues holding his lightsaber, and it looks pretty cool when he does, if I do say so myself. I think this is pretty cool, and I think he can create some really interesting dynamic poses with this figure, and he looks great. He's also really fun to pose, I have to say. There's something about those joints that are so smooth, flowing. You don't ever get the sense that this might snap or break or anything like that. It feels really nice. That's something else I just wanted to mention there. So all in all, I really, really like this figure. I think they've done a fantastic job with him. I love having the Jedi Knights in my collection, and he's right up there for me as probably my favourite. I'm going to say that. He's my favourite Jedi Knight that I have in my Black Series collection. I love him to bits. I think they've done a fantastic job, and that's why I'm giving him the 4 stars. I think he's brilliant. If you're wondering why I've only given 4 instead of 5, well, it's for the paint apps issue, and that's always going to drag these figures down, unfortunately. So yeah, if he'd had a bit more of a wash going through his figures, or if he'd had that cloth tunic and hood, then that would have pushed him to a 5-star figure. But this is a very high-end 4 stars, if that makes sense. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos soon.